Hey everyone, welcome back, and today we need to talk about, of course, NIO deliveries. Are they good? Are they bad? What's my prospects on the future? However, there has been so much going on this week. We also need to talk about what's going on in China, and as you know, my last two videos have been about the situation on the ground, about the protests that are happening, and I basically would sum it up that my position was that these protests could actually somehow help the government in terms of that they're changing the narrative to government protecting the people's livelihoods by the way of the lives first policy. So basically ZeroCovid as a means to have zero deaths from this pandemic. To okay, people are demanding an opening up. Let's do that and shift the responsibility back to the people. So that's kind of been the opportunity there, if you will, and we've actually seen the first signs happening, and I think that's why yesterday and actually a couple of days before we had a really large shorts covering, I would say. So I would say the price movement yesterday in NIO was driven by that. And well, I think the signs couldn't be more clear because, for example, here, this is the Guangzhou Tower literally lit up with the exact message that I've stated, that every individual is the responsible person for their personal health. So Guangzhou is one of the cities most affected right now, has now started to open up again. There's still some districts locked down, but this is an important message, right? And so it seems like those little pieces are somewhat coming together, and investors are kind of seeing this message unfolding, that of course this will not be a opening up immediately, and I think ZeroCovid is there to stay for some time, as I'm always saying. 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. So expect more lockdowns, expect more protests, expect more measurements and stuff now and then. However, the direction seems to be clear, and cities like Guangzhou are showing where this is going. I posted many more signs of this, for example, on my Twitter, so go follow me there, _mm85, and also, of course, in our Patreon community, where also we have the all members chat and daily messaging. And so while I'm sometimes having lots of going on with other projects during the week, this is where you can get everyday information. Anyways, now back to NIO, because of course all of this situation has to do with NIO and well, what can be the performance there for NIO during such difficult times in China. Well, they have delivered 14,178 vehicles in November. That's a record month. NIO has never delivered more than this, and it's an average growth for the November of 30%, but also on the entire year, we're now on an average growth of 31.8%. Maybe we'll finish with a little bit more on that. I'm gonna give you my prospects of that in a second. But anyways, looking a little bit deeper here, deliveries consisted of 8,000 premium smart SUVs and 4,000 or close to 5,000 ES7 and 6,175 premium smart sedans, including the ET7, so 3,200, and the ET5, almost 3,000. So what does it mean? And as always, I need to look into my nerdy Excel file, which by the way, I will be updating and of course, once again, uploading on Patreon. By the way, if you are a patron, shout out to you. You support this channel, staying independent, and help me doing this work. Thanks a lot. And by the way, I know I have lots of catch up to do. Please stay tuned. I will be back and do more Patreon-only content again. Now let's look at the numbers of November and how they compare. So for example, for the ET5, it has improved from just about 1,000 in October to almost 3,000 in November. More on that in a second. The ET7 is now up from 3,000 to 3,200, so that's not a super big increase, and actually in the past it has delivered more than 4,000. I do think that this is the reason, partly still, now that the casting issue should be solved, that there might be still some lags within that. But I think because Factory One is busy producing all of the other models at once, so the old models, the NT 1.0 platform models, as well as the ES7 models, which have ramped close to 5,000. So that was a really big jump here. And it seems like this has been the priority for this month. And I do think that they need to still have some processes of holding the line after manufacturing one car and then bringing on the next model on it. I cannot imagine how otherwise they can do that. So might be still quite tricky to do. And so this means if you look at my chart where I usually adjust for the work days and how many cars have been producing within the work days of a month available, you certainly see that spike at an all-time high of 644 cars produced per work day in November. So that is good news. It is on the highest side it's ever been of this linear growth trend line. However, it's not yet there when it comes to exponential growth, right? And it seems like this is, of course, what NIO is aiming for at some point in time. And actually, well, we have a deadline on it, haven't we? With the Q4 guidance of between 43,000 and 48,000 from the low till the high guidance. And that would mean in December, NIO would have to deliver more than 18,000 cars for the low guidance and close to 24,000 cars to meet the high guidance. So is this realistic? Well, I've just filled out this sheet here roughly where I think this could be going in December. Maybe around 5,000 ET5, 3,500 ET7, 5,000 ES7, and adding the baseline of around 3,000 cars for the old models for the NT 1.0 platform, because to be honest, this looks really like the old models are getting phased out here, which is on the one hand side good for NIO because this is causing the inefficiencies in production as well and the lower margins. On the other hand, of course, it would have been nicer to have more demand still for the older models or more orders, but as the Chinese customers are always wanting the latest things and a new platform is so much better, we can actually kind of be happy that there is still some demand for these old models, or they are able to sell some of these. So as you can see, if you would add up these numbers that I'm projecting here for December, this would only bring us to 16,500 cars in deliveries, and that would add up to only around 41,000 in deliveries, and that would be significantly lower than the low guidance and certainly than the higher guidance, and would bring us in total to 123,000 cars and a year-over-year growth rate of around 35%. Now, why do I set this as a new basic case? Well, let's call it a realistic case. The reason is, well, first of all, in this month, we haven't seen a super big ramp of the ET5 so far. So there are many reasons about it. In my last videos, I have talked about that there has been situations in Hefei with Omicron and some short-term delays in supplier parts, as well as that for some time they have been working in closed loop in the factory too. So that's the factory that's solely producing the ET5. But we can clearly see that the production jump in the ET5 is not there yet where it possibly could be. So parts of it might be a slower ramp than expected, or the COVID situation. And if we are realistic, yes, there are those signals that I've talked about that ZeroCovid is going away, and it's great that, for example, NIO should be now able to more easily deliver cars, for example, in Guangzhou, also a big market, and maybe we see similar stuff happening in Beijing, that there are the restrictions are also lifted over there. However, we still have the factory situation, and we don't know whether we have some down days in December on top of it, right? So this COVID policy isn't going away in an instant, and so why should we expect that NIO will be able to ramp to thousands more of ET5 than it had shown in the last month already? And one indication is that I know that the produced VIN of the sort of vehicle identification number right now for the ET5 is around 6,200. So that means we have so far delivered 4,200, and that essentially means a gap of 2,000 ET5 that have been in production. and are either already coming off the line very quickly or came off the line already. And so this means that there might be 2,000 cars currently lagging in deliveries that are still to be delivered quite soonish. But will this be enough to really bump the numbers for December, while having also all of the other models still to be produced in just one single factory, where I would expect that the ET7 and the ES7 could possibly stay quite similar to last month. So this is certainly a quite conservative scenario, if you will. I would call it more realistic, given on what's going on with the disruptions in China currently. Still, it's also a 35% year-over-year growth compared to a 37% year-over-year growth if they meet the lower guidance, or if they have a brilliant year, even still 43% in the higher case. So that would be nice to have, obviously. But if I had to give probabilities, I would say the realistic case would have a chance of around 50%, then maybe 40% for the lower guidance and maybe 10% for the higher guidance, based on these numbers that I'm seeing and what's currently happening in China. Now, the year has certainly been very difficult for NIO, but I would also like to give a little bit more context here. So I tweeted out this more than a day ago, basically showing the November insured units, about what we knew back then, and seeing NIO back then at around 13,000 insured units, and that's close to Volkswagen's all electric EVs delivered. But always keep in mind that Volkswagen is selling at a much lower average sales price. NIO is rather on par with, let's say, a BMW, even more than an Audi, maybe with Mercedes, and they don't really appear on that list, or only BMW here with close to 6,500. And so if you look in this list, the top names here are more in the mass market with lower average sales prices, such as BYD, Tesla, more and more moving in that direction with their price cuts in China, handling or pushing forward the cost efficiencies that they have, so therefore tapping into a larger addressable market. I personally think that's okay and part of the strategy. Others would say, oh, that's an issue. I'm not in that views, but NIO really doing very well in this premium to luxuries in the BEV only segment here, in my point of view. And that's also why, and that's not investment advice, I have increased in the last couple of days my holdings in my trading portfolio to 20%. So that's not my long portfolio. I have a NIO long position at $3 average, which I'm not trading at all. I'm just holding it. But I also have a portfolio where I'm, more short-term oriented at times. And I was lucky to pick it up before this huge rally here. And so this really sums up also my views around the prospects of December and the guidance and the current deliveries. I would say these are impressive results. At the same time, I'm not having too high hopes, or let's say unrealistic expectations when it comes to December. And with that, also the quarterly upper guidance. I think maybe, the lower ones has some probabilities, but might be also a more realistic case. Who knows? This year has been just very challenging for NIO overall, but I do think the fundamentals, if you look at what is this linear growth curve currently, they look pretty solid, don't they? And then NIO is going into the super cycle with all of the models finally on the NT 2.0 platform, plus some really encouraging news from the macroeconomic environment. For example, yesterday, the Fed minutes, which have been quite good, as well as here lithium prices seem to have topped out a little bit in the short term. As you know, for every 100,000 yuan increase in those lithium prices, NIO will be hurt on the bottom line for 2% on the margins. So the same effect should be true in the other direction. If this chart is going lower in the future, and that might be the case, then NIO's margins are also getting better solely because of those input costs, and additionally with the increased ramp of the ET5, the factory 2, that at some point in time, COVID is over. This will happen. It's only a matter of time. But this will be resolved, and I guess I know the market will also be forward looking at some point in time. I mean, the stock has been priced for misses, that's for certain. And also all of the lockdowns were priced in, as you can see by yesterday when they took off some of the shorts. So unfortunately, at this point in time, still very volatile, but seems to be heading in the right direction, if you ask me. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.